All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to Q, a musical podcast.
Yes.
Sean, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Sean. I like musicals.
Yes. And my name is Meredith, and I don't like musicals.
And we're sisters.
It's true.
And let me just, let's do a first step of just really over analyzing why we called this Q.
Yes, please. It was a challenge to get to a name.
So it was really hard to find a punny theater name for some reason. I even looked at other podcasts and I found very few with like pun names.
Yeah.
So what we came up with is Q spelled with Q's, the letter, because we are Quins. That's our last name.
That's right.
And a Q is when in theater you do a tech run where it's just from tech Q to tech Q, bare bones, just to make sure that all the Q's are in line. So it is a term that we use in the theater world that I thought was, you know what, that's the closest thing to a pun we can do.
We got there in the end.
I like it.
I like it too.
think it'll be good.
But now everyone knows what it is, because initially I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, I had to explain, I had to explain that.
I mean, I come from very little theater background. Obviously, we're sisters. We grew up together. Sean, you were in theater. You were in show choir. You were in women's choir, children's theater.
Yep.
You went to school for theater arts. Shout out Rutgers.
Yep, Rutgers.
So yeah, you're coming at it from a different position than I am. And I think my whole life, people have asked me if I was a theater kid, and I was very resistant of that.
Yeah.
But I think I'm trying to kind of figure out what it is about musicals that is generally unappealing to me. Like, what about it is the cringe element, or the thing that is an eye roll to me, that if it just wasn't there, it would be a great movie, or, you know, something like that. So I guess that's what I'm trying to explore through this with you.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, what do you like about theater?
So theater itself is a form of storytelling that I just find very compelling. Being able to like act out the characters and see, because I'm a pretty heavy reader, but to have it played out as dialogue, to see emotion. And what's exciting about theater, especially when you see it in person, is that you feel like a fly on the wall in the scene. So all of that, the emotion that you have when you're talking to a real person sitting like right across from them, you get to be secondhand to that feeling. So it's like an extra bit. So when you're watching a movie, of course there's emotion that is like projected from that movie, but you're not feeling the sixth sense of presence that you feel when you're sitting in a theater. So that's what I really love theater. Plus the idea of the technical aspect. I know you work in stop motion, so you appreciate the technical aspect of animation. And, you know, wow, they made this happen out of this, or this, like the innovative ways that sometimes even rudimentary innovation that feels like practical magic. And that I get that from theater as well because of the technical aspect. Just a little background. I am a performer, and I went to school for performing, but was sort of picked up by the costume designer and pulled into the costume world. So for most of my professional theater career, I have been working backstage as a costume wardrobe supervisor and designer. So I feel excited to see the stage from both sides as well.
Yeah. And I think even in stop motion, there's actually a lot of overlap where a lot of people come from theater and then move to stop motion, which I find interesting, just in the way that you were talking about the appeal of practical magic and the build for a production, a performance, you know. There's a lot of common interests in both of those things. But the thing, I guess, that is specific to theater is the, like you were saying, what's the word I'm looking for? The participation of an audience in.
It definitely is an energy too. Like you can rehearse without a crowd, and it feels different when people are watching. It feels different to have them give them your attention, you know? And
Yeah, and they laugh when something's funny. Right, yeah.
And like live theater, something goes differently, and it's a think on your feet kind of storytelling medium.
Sure, and in a movie, you're doing scene by scene, out of order, right?
Yeah.
And with a theatrical performance, you're going all at once every time. You're going through that entire story every night, all at once. That's interesting too. And it never, I suppose, never goes perfectly right, because nothing ever does, especially in live performance. So.
Well, it's always going to be different a little bit. You could do the same show over and over again, but you're human. So, to be, what is it? To err is to be human. And so that's an exciting thing. And I think just if we were going to bring it back to musicals, the idea of musicals is that you're bringing another element of storytelling through movement and song, which I think is just the way people do that can either be really effective or really detrimental to the story. And I agree that not every musical theater is nothing but camp,
Sure.
But there are aspects of campy musicals that I do enjoy. So that's why I think it would be interesting to do this project as well, because I'm not going to love everything we watch, and I'm not going to hate everything we watch, but
yeah, same. And I generally don't like musicals, but even when we were preparing for this podcast, I was like, well, I do love, the movie musical Hairspray. What was I saying? Like, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is a musical, and I love it.
And I think that having the accessibility of musicals, like being able to stream them, being able to go see them, that's all something that's excitingly coming back.
Yay!
So that's why I feel like this is a good time to do something like this.
Totally, yeah. So I guess
should we introduce?
I guess we should
musical?
introduce. Yeah. So we're in an effort to remain topical, to get people to watch and listen to the podcast. We decided to talk about West Side Story, the new movie musical, 2021 from Steven Spielberg that just came out last year. It was nominated for the Best Picture Academy Award. And we both watched it independently and are coming together to talk about it.
Yeah. And we're actually recording this in the same room, which might be one of the only times we get to do that.
It's true. Yeah. Oh, you didn't have to bring it up. It's so sad.
West Side Story, we're specifically, I have some historical context to bring to it when we get into it, but specifically talking about the Spielberg West Side Story, because that's the one that we watched and are able to critique for our rubric. But I also want to talk about
rubric.
Let me explain. So for structure's sake, we have each independently graded the experience and performance of Spielberg's West Side Story on a 1 to 5 rubric for story, acting, ensemble, music and lyrics, choreo, and overall. And then probably, figuring out, once we hit those numbers and talk about each of those aspects, coming up with a consensus. Is this good or is this bad? Is this a cheer or a jeer or whatever it is, So, do you want to do your summary?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm pulling the summary almost entirely from just the Wikipedia, just because it succinctly represents the massive impact that this musical seems to have had and all of its places it's come from. So West Side Story is a musical conceived by Jerome Robbins, with music by Leonard Bernstein, lyrics by Stephen Sondheim, and a book by Arthur Lawrence. Inspired by William Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet, the story is set in the mid-1950s in the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York City, then a multiracial, blue-collar neighborhood. The musical explores the rivalry between the Jets and the Sharks, two teenage street gangs of different ethnic backgrounds. The members of the Sharks from Puerto Rico are taunted by the Jets, a white gang. The young protagonist, Tony, a former member of the Jets and best friend of the gang's leader, Riff, falls in love with Maria, the sister of Bernardo, the leader of the Sharks. The dark theme, sophisticated music, extended dance scenes, and focus on social problems marked a turning point in musical theater. The story birthed a Broadway musical in 1957 that ran for an unbelievable 732 performances, and later on became a movie adaptation in 1961 and then again in 2021. So yeah, that sort of establishes the main roots of the story.
And when they were conceiving of this, it seems like, I'm not exactly sure if it was Jerome Robbins' sort of like idea. His friend was cast in Romeo and Juliet, and he worked at the actors, what is that called? The actors studio?
Oh yeah,
He was
yes.
like teaching classes. So his friend was like, "Oh, help me do this." So he was doing like a little bit of a script study of Romeo. And he's like, "This would be really fun modernized." So then he was like thinking about it. He goes to I don't know if he went to Arthur, if he went to Leonard, I don't know who he went to first. But he's going to them, he's asking about them, like, would you want to be doing this? Do you want to turn this into a musical with me? And it seemed like this is a good idea, but we've got other stuff going on. So they came back to it a couple years later and they just sort of jumped in. But originally they were talking about it as if it was going to be East Side Story, which is about
It's
they were
funny
going
to hear
center
that.
center it around Catholics and Jewish members in that East Side community of New York. And just for some context, all four of these men that sort of conceived West Side Story as it is now are Jewish men in New
Okay.
York. So it was like,
Wow.
okay, so it could be about this, it could be about this struggle, this racial tension of ethnicity and religion. But then, this is sort of anecdotal from the symposium that was recorded in the 80s, and I'm not exactly sure, because every time they told a story, one of them would say, "That's not how it happened. It happened like this." And then they would just like jump into another way that it happened. So they said that there was a newspaper up on the table, and it was LA Times talking about Alvera Street and how there was a fight between the Americans, and I'm using air quotes here, Americans and the Mexican immigrants, and how there was like racial tension because of Alvera Street down in LA. And so then they were like, oh, well, what if it was that? What if it was about the Puerto Rican community that was in the West Side and how the Irish, Italian, Polish, white community has a lot of tension with that, like feeling like they're coming in and taking what is theirs kind of thing. So then it turned into West Side Story. But I believe the year that it was up for Tony, it was up for Best Musical, but Music Man won.
Music Man.
Music Man. And I'm like, let's look at them. Let's look at which one is, I mean,
Oh my God.
they're both still current, right? Like Music Man's up on Broadway.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's at the Winter Garden, which is funny because Winter Garden is where West Side opened.
Oh.
Yeah. But anyway, so Music Man took it. And I think there was some article written by the Music Man writer or someone in like high up in the Music Man. They wrote sort of like an op-ed piece. And they were talking about musical theater. And it was after they won Best Musical. And I think it felt like a jab to West Side Story because they said musicals should only deal with happy and light content. They shouldn't deal with the dark content. It's a musical, right?
Okay.
And it's like, well, which one is really going to stand the test of time? This one that is clearly riveting and
Yeah.
dark
Honest.
and like based on a story that has definitely had the test of time against
Absolutely.
it, you know?
Yeah.
And I just think that's funny because we all hate Music Man.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's that is such a stupid thing to say. Like,
Yeah.
I understand the argument. Like, you hear that a lot now where people talk about movies and the inclusion of the pandemic in current media.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, but like, I'm trying to get away from this problem that I'm
Right.
currently experiencing.
The escapism of not looking at a mirror.
Exactly. But I don't really understand what about musicals. I guess that's just sort of where they came from. And so there needed to be a change or, a change of direction to really be like, no, they don't always have to be happy. But I don't understand why the inclusion of songs means that the songs can't be about sorrow or be about change
especially
or
when you look at
challenge.
things that are not American musicals, or if you look back at sort of the different presentations in like Eastern theater, or even like Greek theater. Like
Sure.
there's music in Greek
Yeah.
theater, and it's like the chorus is sort of lamenting about the tragedy that's happening. They're tragedies.
Isn't opera like the oldest form of musical theater? And
I mean, it's like
not
what is it? The first, what do they ever call it? Like the original theater or whatever.
right.
Something.
And I don't think there's a single happy opera. Like they're all grim.
No, and there's always grim moments at least. And I feel like to say that it has to end happy would be to shortchange the medium.
Yeah.
So I disagree with that.
I sure do.
Okay, so let's look at our first, I think this is a good moment to talk about our first rung of the rubric.
Excellent. Let's do it.
So story. I put a 3.
Are we doing halves?
You
Did
can do
we
a half,
agree on
yeah.
that? I did 3.5.
Okay.
I'm very familiar with Shakespeare. You know, we both grew up with it. We both took Shakespeare classes. I enjoy I guess there's just such a classic nature of Shakespeare stories where they feel like the story existed before they were put down on the page, right?
Yeah,
They're just so intrinsic in all of our media. And also it's like, there's always a star-crossed love in your own life where the one that got away, right? And so Romeo and Juliet to me is like, I think to everyone, the oldest love story, right? Which deserves respect in its own right. But I think participating with this in current year is sort of like, you find the intrinsic flaws of just like, this would be easier if you just talked to each other. This would be easier if you just communicated effectively.
Conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution. It's all it takes. Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure if that's an appropriate way to critique the media, because it's like, it's an interesting and honest representation of the original source material while still making it more current and more interesting, right? With this racial clash between these two gangs and this place that's constantly changing. To just kind of put all of that aside and be like, yeah, but like, I've heard it all before, may not be like the best way to participate with it, but it's hard to ignore that it's so in its own realm that if you change any piece of it, it's no longer Shakespearean. Do you know what I'm saying? Or like,
well, I think, because to me, Romeo and Juliet is its own adaptation of that trope, right? Like it's its own adaptation. So this is just a further adaptation. But what I do like what West Side Story does is that they take classic moments from that play and turn it into New York. The stage is no longer Verona. It's New York.
Right.
And so the balcony scene is a fire escape. I think that's so classic. That's just like, it's such a good representation of the classic literature.
Definitely. And it doesn't feel shoehorned in either, where like you would, that staging is believable within this story. You don't ever question why on earth are they on this fire escape. It still has the same level of risk factor where Tony's
They're
worried
right
that he'll be
behind
caught.
us,
Yeah, of course. So that's all really great to take that source material and then modernize it in a way that doesn't feel like, well, the balcony scene is really integral to Romeo and Juliet. We have to find a way to put it in somehow. Like it fits just right where it doesn't feel that way. You know what I mean?
I think the reason I put a 3 and not higher is because it's definitely relies on the insta love. It relies on it a lot.
Yes.
And I think especially in Spielberg's West Side, it doesn't translate to me as them loving each other. I don't think that's really the fault of anything other than the fact that like we live in a modern world and I know how it works, you know?
Yeah.
It just feels like there's too much pulling them apart. And I need to feel like despite the fact that they're being pulled apart, they're still in love. They're still willing to go the distance. And I feel like there's a couple of moments in the show that are really have to rely on that.
Yeah. Yes.
That like intrinsic bond that they have created, that, you know, this bolt of lightning that hit them. And it just, I don't know if there's enough build for that to be real to me.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way.
Yes. And especially in the final, you know, the approach to the climax, right?
Yeah.
Where
You talking about Maria's song with Anita?
yes, I guess it would technically be before that. I'm trying to make sure that I know the order here, where they have their rumble, they have their tussle, and Bernardo ends up getting shot, the brother, by Tony, right? So Tony's on the run and wants to find that
he gets stabbed.
the
gun doesn't come
that's
until
right.
later.
Okay, sorry.
See that?
That's
okay.
right. Okay.
So that's a thing. Sorry, a little sidebar time.
Sidebar.
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 And then so that Max was watching it with me, and he said, "Oh, it's Chekhov's gun," and I was like, "Yeah, it is," but also like, why is it? And it's because that's not in the original. It doesn't come forward. And that's why I think that's interesting. So if we're going to talk about Spielberg's additions to the narrative and how he's shaping it I feel like for a modern audience and sort of explaining what was unexplained kind of thing. So the gun doesn't come from anywhere. Chino gets the gun from somewhere else. Like Riff doesn't get the gun and then play with the gun and then accidentally drop the gun.
Yeah,
and
so then Chino has it. Okay.
But so with the gun out, I think that those scenes mean something different. And I find them very compelling where he's playing with this gun. So it's based on Riff's actions that the rest of the movie is playing out.
Right.
You know, Riff is such a part of this, not just as a catalyst for the Rumble, but also as almost its own inciting incident for Tony's death at the end.
Right.
And, you know, the tragedy of seeing the Chekhov gun, knowing that it will go off, because we know how this story ends. Like, I don't think I'm spoiling Romeo and Juliet for anybody, but, but I also think that where they put Cool, and I'm sure I'll talk about this more when we talk about music, but Cool was supposed to be sung by the Jets after the Rumble.
Oh.
So that they could calm themselves down before the police got to them.
Oh, okay.
So they're stealing themselves. So it's this originally the song is about them hiding their emotion from losing their friend.
Whoa.
And like because they don't have a leader anymore. They have to govern themselves. They have to, you know, keep calm.
And is that the song that occurs when they're in the holding cell? Is that?
No. The song that I'm not exactly sure how it's placed because I haven't read it in a really long time, but the song that Tony sings to Riff about the gun.
Oh, okay. That's towards the beginning then.
So when he's got the gun, he's playing with it. And then Ansel Elgort comes in and he says, like, you got to be cool, boy. Don't play with the gun.
Oh,
and then they fight over the gun.
Okay.
That song is supposed to happen after the Rumble.
Interesting.
Because they don't have the gun. It's not, you know. But I like that because then Cool becomes the moment where Tony sees his gang is not his gang anymore. And I know that Tony's been separating himself from his gang for a really long time, but he even tells Maria, they're my boys. Like, they'll listen to me because he still trusts them and believes them. And I think they do trust and believe him too, but they still have this pride that they will not let go of. And Riff is so blinded by it that he's not going to reach out. And then that really does, for me, feel like an inciting incident for the actual tragedy. Whereas him meeting Maria is the inciting incident for the conflict, right? But
exactly.
But the end of the movie really comes from the fact that Riff won't be cool.
Yeah, there you go. To come back to what you were saying about how the story in general is really dependent on the insta-love, right? And I recognize that as a pretty severe flaw in the flow of the story when Tony comes back after Bernardo dies, gets stabbed, and it's like immediate, like, okay, I guess we're gonna have sex now, and then I still love you, goodbye.
Yeah,
there's very little conflict.
The convincing, because you have to convince the sister of the person you just murdered that that it was an accident, that you still love her.
There's got to be a push and pull, and there wasn't.
I also felt that during the song with Anita and Maria, where Anita, whose person she loves, has just been murdered by this boy. By this boy she doesn't know shit about, right? And then Maria, who is like, I love him, has to sing a song so beautiful to compel Anita to not only forgive her, but to help them.
Yep.
And the only reason, and there's actually a quote from one of the writers, which I thought was really beautiful, so I wrote it down, and I couldn't remember who said it, because in the symposium, it's just a recording, they all really sound the same. But he said, so the reason she couldn't get the message through was because of the prejudice, which is the heart of the show. That's the quote. And that's about Anita's attempted rape.
Okay.
And yes, I believe that. And yes, I think that's very powerful where she steels herself to go and help them and she's going to be this messenger and that's, she's going to do this. But I just don't feel like she actually believes Maria. Like, I don't feel like I could put myself in that situation where I would be okay with the fact
I agree
that someone I trusted and loved is telling me to help someone that killed the person I love.
And I don't think Maria was coming at it from, they're obviously at odds with each other because they're both arguing. They're both coming at it from a different perspective. But Maria is not speaking Anita's language in that way, where, like, she's coming at it from a point of, like, she's grieving and she's also talking about, like, the consistency of this feud and how, like, these people can't be trusted because look at how many times we've been burned. And all she really has to say is just like, but I love him. But I love him.
But Daddy, I love him.
But I love him. And it's like, okay, who cares? Like,
right. Yeah,
I loved him and now he's dead.
That's what I'm saying. And so for all of that to be true and for me to believe it, it needs to be a stronger connection.
I agree.
It needs to be a stronger connection. And I just didn't feel it. So that's why I put a 3.
And not to jump into the next, I'm sure we're ready, but
let's go ahead.
Is the next actors?
Acting.
Okay, great. So I guess to lead into that with a question, do you think the chemistry between Maria and Tony would have been bettered by perhaps someone who wasn't Ansel Elgort? Let's talk about Ansel Elgort.
I think, you know what, to be contrary to my own belief,
yes,
I think he was really good.
Okay.
The only thing I hated was his stupid... I love her, Bernardo. I fucking hated that. Bernardo, I love her. I thought that felt so hokey.
Yeah,
that felt so hokey.
Very.
But I thought that he really felt enamored in a lot of scenes. I think when he's talking to Rita Moreno about how love and life are the same thing. I love that scene. I love that little speech. I think that he was really taken by her. And I think that, I don't think there's a lot of chemistry between them. I do think he was trying to act the hell out of it.
Yes, I agree with that.
I don't like him as a personal person for reasons I will not discuss. But, and I think he sounded good too. I did think he sounded good.
I disagree with that. I do think he was acting his ass off and he was taking it really seriously. I agree that there was like a glisten in his eyes every time he saw Maria, and at the dance, like I believed that immediate visual attraction where they noticed each other and they just were transfixed by one another, and that was all very believable. It didn't feel like they were following cues or like putting their feet on the X on the floor. You know what I mean? Like there was a connection. I was mildly distracted by this New York accent. And I don't think he was a very good singer. We'll talk about that soon too. But now that you previously mentioned Cool, I'm remembering Cool, and I blocked it out because I don't think he was very good.
I don't think it was that cool.
I don't think it was that cool. And I had to look up the performance in the 1961 movie just to confirm where the notes were supposed to land, because there's a little bit of a dip where he's like, boy, he's kind of like wavering a little bit, and I wasn't sure if that was like legitimately written in the music or if he was kind of like trying to casualize it. And
I think it is a little jazzy. It's definitely a little jazzy, but I think he needs to enunciate better.
Yes.
It feels like a little muddy, and I don't know if that's because he's trying to be like, I still have this accent, or like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But I can understand that for sure. I just thought his tonality was good.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do. It's a pretty high for a band to sing. It's the tenor part is very high, and
that's very
beautiful.
True.
I think the music is beautiful. But what did you put as your number for acting?
Oh, I'm sorry. I put a 4.
A 4. I put a 3.
Okay. Let's talk about you go first. I'm curious about.
So I thought obviously Rita Moreno.
I mean,
just incredible.
Really good.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of like familiarity with her. Like I don't for most of these people. Who was the lady in Hamilton that's really popular from this?
Oh my god.
I can look up her.
Find her name. She just won an Oscar, which is great. 60 years after Rita Moreno won her Oscar for the same part.
Yes, that's right. Yes, so I'm sure everyone is screaming at us right now.
I know, I'm sorry.
Ariana DeBose. DeBose.
I love
Ariana DeBose.
I think she was great. I thought she was so natural.
Yeah.
She felt like she lived there. She felt like she believed it. Like her version of America.
Yes.
It was so good.
That was the best song out of the whole thing.
It's the best.
Again, we'll get there.
It's the best, yeah. But it's her. So a little background on America, which I really thought was interesting. I mentioned this to you a little earlier, but I wanted to save the discussion for this, was that when Rita Moreno was doing West Side Story, this is happening, what is this, 61. So, you know, they were darkening her skin and writing her lyrics. She didn't want to sing because some of the lyrics were really degrading of Puerto Rico, where she's native to Puerto Rico. So she was saying that it was all about how like gross of an island it is and how she never wants to go back there, because the song is about like opportunity in America. She doesn't want to go back to there, right?
Yes.
They ended up updating the lyrics for Rita Moreno because she was just so put off by them, which I agree with. I think that absolutely is true. But I believe they even upgraded them further for this version about how, you know, to not be so degrading to this place, but to really honor it as a homeland, but still validate the ambition to find new opportunity in America.
Exactly.
And not use it as, well, America is better. It's still a back and forth, right? Like I love that lyric where it's like, how does it go? But it's like
life is all right in America if you're all white in America.
Yes, and I think that still reigns true, and I think that I really do like the commentary between them. I thought Bernardo was just so good.
Yeah, he was
He
great.
was so good. And you really believe how like he's angry and conflicted.
Yes.
Angry and conflicted. And I love that they made him a boxer.
Yes.
So he's got that like so he's
there's
gonna
fighting energy, but it's like, you know,
but it's also about like
it's professional and, you know, conflicting with the personal like aggression.
And he wants more.
Yes.
He does want more. Yes. He wants higher status. And he's trying to find it in a way that he believes his status can achieve, right? Like he doesn't have his head in the clouds where he thinks like, oh, I could do anything. I'm in America, kind of like how Anita is portraying America.
Yes.
But also he believes like, if I work hard, if I keep my nose to the stone, if I really this. And he's not a perfect character. He's very complex.
Yep.
And I think Maria doesn't, Maria's character in this new version is not as apologetic about his controlling sort of overbearingness as the original movie, which I think is a good update. And I like that Maria holds her own a little bit.
Yeah. And I also think like that sells the conflict a little more. Like if she's just going to fully, I mean, I've never seen the original, so I'm not sure how they represent that. But
I saw it a long time ago, so I'm not like 100% sure, but I do know that there's a couple of scenes where, you know, he comes in and he starts like delegating stuff in the apartment and she goes, oh, Bernardo, like just, you know, sort of brushes it off, whereas Maria has a little bit more of a personality. She's got a little bit more of a status in her own home.
Yes.
And I like that a lot. And I also think that, the language.
Yes,
the
oh my
Spanish.
God, I forgot that. Yeah, that is actually, I was watching this with subtitles on. I often do with most things, especially to pay attention to the lyrics and the music because I'm not familiar with the songs. These are the first time I've ever heard any of these songs from West Side Story. And, you know, people were like, what, you've never heard Pretty?
Right,
I Feel Pretty? Right. You've never heard? No, I hadn't heard any of this. So in an effort to pay attention to the lyrics, I had the subtitles on, and there was a lot of Spanish in the movie. Conversational Spanish where they're really quickly quipping at each other, and then longer statements where they're actually speaking to each other in full Spanish with no representation in the subtitles. That was not being subtitled for us, which is a risky choice, but a really good one, and I really enjoyed that.
I liked it a lot, and I like when Spielberg is asked about it, he said he didn't want to give English the power over the Spanish in the movie.
And that fully comes through. Yeah. There's like a representation of like, just because we can't immediately understand what they're saying doesn't mean that I shouldn't be listening to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like they're still acting. They're still like...
You can still understand
You can still totally understand. Like you the whole idea of what they're trying to get across is very clear in their body language and the way that they're speaking to one another and the blocking of the shot. Like all of that is very clear.
And I like it. It gives the moment of the speak English from Anita. It gives more of a moment for it.
Yeah.
Where she feels like, no, we're going to speak English in this house. We're going to assimilate in this house because we're going to really give it a shot in America.
Totally.
And I think that was all really great. Maria was... fine.
Yeah, meek in a way that
she had like a little bit of a sass. She
But
seemed
only
really
with
like
her family. I feel like it was overtaken by her love again in the conflict where he comes through the fire escape or the window or whatever after stabbing her brother, and that wraps itself up really quickly where she kind of falls apart in a way that isn't directed towards him and more just kind of, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I know, and I don't agree.
Yeah.
I just don't believe it. I don't
Yes.
believe it, and that's why I don't feel it. And it could just be the chemistry, the lack of chemistry between them, that makes me feel like they did less of a good job than everybody else in the movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like
It's crazy
when
that
it really cinched for me for Maria was her at the end with her monologue.
yeah. Yo, yeah.
I think that she did a great job with that, and I know she's done that before. I think she played Maria on stage. I think for such a young actress, she's really putting a lot of weight into it, and you know, I'm not going to say that she was bad. That's absolutely not true.
No.
She wasn't bad.
No.
But what I'm saying is that, like, I just wasn't portrayed the amount of love and stakes, like the stakes
Yes.
of what is going on. I wasn't portrayed that between them, and that's why I feel like it was a little thing. And like the best thing I liked about Maria was that when what's his face was dead.
Yep.
You know, and you're like,
What's
oh,
his face? Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
and you're, you know, like, because she is pretty strong in that, and I think there are a lot of moments for her to shine, and I don't anticipate having a lot of people agree with that because
Sure.
I think people really were taken by her.
Yeah, and I think, she's charming enough, and again, she has a little bit of sass, like she has a personality, but I agree that I feel like so much of the supporting cast was so strong in not only holding up the stakes of this drama between the two clans, but also like the reason I love the song America so much is because we'll talk about it, but it really builds that complexity of all of these problems swirling around and how nuanced they are, and there is no right answer because it's all true. And I think with Maria, I don't feel that push and pull, that tug in her performance where she's just sort of like just going with the flow, like kind of like, I'm in love with Tony and I'm gonna figure out a way to be with Tony, but not really, like I'm not gonna like kind of fix any of this or attempt to quell any of these problems. Of course they're bigger than her. I don't know how much she'd be able to do, how much she'd be able to fix, but sort of in her dialogue or in perhaps any of the songs, like the desperation of feeling out of control of these conflicts and how she's not going to be able to get what she wants until something changes, I feel like was missing, which made the main romance the weakest relationship in the whole film. Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I thought everybody was really good. I thought
Well, why don't we pause on that and we just give our numbers for Ensemble so that we can talk about the rest of the
okay,
cast.
great.
So I put a 3, but now that I'm talking about it, I think it a 3.5 just as a whole.
I gave that one a 3.5 as well. I was really excited to talk about baby John Mulaney, who played Riff, who I enjoyed quite a bit.
I liked Riff a lot.
I came into this really with no expectations, right? Like, I'm doing a movie a day challenge, and I wanted to see all of the Best Picture nominees before the Oscars this year. And so there came a point where I had to watch West Side Story, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put it on. And the first moments in this movie are just like choreo. Like they're jumping in, they're snapping, they're going. And then Riff is just going. He's real kind of suave, and you can tell that he's the leader of his pack and he's the controller of this area and all of these people are listening to him. He had so much confidence that didn't feel like he wasn't able to carry it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you could
right.
tell that like he had this confidence and he could totally control this gang of people with a snap of his fingers, but he's also dealing with conflicts and with feeling like he is missing his family, and also he's losing his home and all of these things. Like it's a lot to carry in a very simple supporting role, And I thought he did really well. I honestly feel like he was one of the better performances in the whole thing.
He
Like,
was great.
He was
He
really
was great.
good.
I liked him a lot. I thought he was really charismatic.
Very.
He's a good dancer.
Oh,
I mean, we'll talk
about
the dancing.
We're gonna talk about the dancing. What's his name? I'm trying to find him in here.
I really liked
Mike
him.
Faced.
Mike Faced.
Yeah.
I thought he was really great. I thought Bernardo was really great. I loved all their stuff together.
Yeah.
I would just watch them. You know? I would just watch them.
And all of the additional supporting cast, like all the people in the big dance scene at the school.
Oh, yeah.
And the girlfriend with the blonde hair.
Oh, yeah. She was even great. She was great.
She was great. She said like 4 things, and I would love her.
I know. And she was great at the end when she was like, he doesn't want to see me. He cared about me once. And you're like, oh, the desperation.
Yeah, it's sweet.
So Rita Moreno's character, Valentina, is written in for her by Tony Kushner, who is the screenwriter, so that she can play the character of Doc. Doc was the original owner of the candy shop.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It was just a white guy that owned this candy shop.
Okay.
So, but they wanted Rita Moreno involved, and Rita Moreno was like, I would love to be involved, but I don't do cameos. And Steven Spielberg was like, it's not a cameo. We wrote it for you. Tony Kushner wants you involved. And so then she did it. And so she's taking the place of this sort of older wise man character kind of thing that Doc was to Tony. This neutral good.
And what a great addition too, because
then it shows you, then it's more of an example of what Tony could see life could be. Like
absolutely.
That there is a road where he could love who he wants. And there's that really lovely moment where she's teaching him Spanish.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up.
So good at both being loving and caring and
being worried.
Super fucking like even what am I trying to say? Like not critical, but like suspicious. Like she's like looking at him like, why are you asking me that? Like you know, she has to be guarded. She also does a really great job bridging the gap between the fact that she is a Puerto Rican woman and a part of this gang's life. She's watched them all grow up. She was always there around them. And like, you know, she's this almost motherly matriarchal figure to them. And does she feel like she betrayed her roots? Like, does she feel like she's betrayed them? And I really like that she called them rapists, because in the original, he calls them like no-gooders or something. Like something really benign, but also that's 61. So
yeah, very sanitized.
Yeah, but she says what it is. She says what it is. Yeah. And like, I'm like that's put in the hands of a woman. I like that it was put in the hands of Rita Moreno.
Yep.
And she just consistently knocks it out of the park every time she's on scene.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that was a write-in character, because it is so integral, I think. I think that scene teaching Tony those simple Spanish phrases, it adds a lot of, like what you were saying, of like there's a believability, there's a light at the end of the tunnel for him to be able to live the future that he sees in his head, and that there's something past all of this prejudice and violence and whatever. And that's made so believable, having this relationship with this woman that he works for, right? She runs the place.
Yeah. So she owns it now that Doc has died, and Tony was hired after he got out of jail. She hired him on as like a cleaning kid.
Gotcha.
And and again, it's sort of matriarchal figure. Also, they gave her a place for us. That song is usually sung by Tony and Maria.
Oh. Okay.
And that's also how they end the musical. I think they end the musical where she's singing to his dying corpse. There's a place for us. But instead of that, because they gave it to Rita Moreno, who's basically reminiscing about Doc and saying like, it's almost twofold, where it's like, there was a place for us, but is there really? Did we make this up? Like, are we
in denial?
Are we in denial about this? Was this really safe for us? Is this safe for me? Like, am I who I am? Did I give up what is there a place for resolution?
Totally.
You know, and I just loved the context they gave that song, because it's a beautiful song.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I wish I had that context coming from the other movie.
Right. So instead she sings Tonight, I think, at Tony when he's dying. It sort of bridged the suspend of disbelief about the songs that were sung by separate people. But I just really love the inclusion of Valentina's character. And as far as Ensemble goes, everyone was really pushing for this to be excellent. And I think that overall, really excellent work.
Yes, I have to agree. It's a shame that overall, if I'm looking at everybody, my least favorite performance probably came from Maria. Let's talk about anybody's.
All right.
How do you feel about the inclusion?
I thought it was interesting. I really love that it was almost like Tony was the only person that ever respected anybody's, and therefore he was really the one that connected with Tony and was still Tony's boy. You know what I mean? Like it felt like he was.
So as the gang was moving away from Tony, there was still someone.
And so then it started. It was like, because you need someone to have the conflict when it's like after cool for them to be like, no, maybe we should think about this within the gang, right? And then they start antagonizing him and calling him like the dickless wonder and all this stuff. And instead of it being a tomboy, which I think tomboys are valid in a lot of senses, but for it to be clearly a trans mask man who is only seen by Tony to give Legion to Tony. Yeah. And I did think that was effective. And I also like the fact, again, like with Rita Moreno saying, you're rapist. Like really sort of almost retconning the original.
Totally,
like,
totally. Hey guys.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Don't write it in and then hide from it. Yeah, right. Exactly.
And I mean, they were in the code,
Yes.
They were making a movie in code and, I think pretty sure 4 gay Jewish men.
Yep. Love
making a movie in code. So I can understand that, but I did like the inclusion of that.
I agree. Yeah. Super strong ensemble. Dare I say they carried it.
Yeah. Honestly. And like, let's talk about New York as the fourth main character.
Totally.
Because using the setting of New York streets as like, instead of the Cloister Museum where they do their wedding.
Yep.
They're in a bridal shop in the original.
Oh, okay.
And it just feels very small set. It doesn't feel very, we're in New York City. Because New York itself felt so much more vast in this version than, and I love that they did the Lincoln Center thing. That's not part of it.
Yeah.
The Lincoln Center taking away their neighborhood, becoming part of the conflict. And it's like there's a ticking clock behind all of this that's sort of giving Riff and giving Bernardo a sense of urgency where it's like, well, I'm going to take charge of what I have left before it's gone. That it just plays well. It gives a lot of insight to the feud. And I like that they danced on the street a lot more.
Yeah.
Like the movement and stuff like that.
So, they took advantage of the fact that this isn't appearing on a stage.
Yeah.
Right? So it feels like a musical and it has this, the staging of a musical where they utilize their surroundings, but they change their surroundings and they're outside and they're going from place to place. So it's a good marriage of that.
I love a flash mob. I love a flash mob.
Oh my God, we'll talk about it again. We will talk about the flash mob.
And I love a little flash mob moment.
Oh my goodness.
But let's do music now. Let's do music and lyrics.
All right.
What number?
Okay. I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 4.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll start. I guess the negative person should start first.
Yeah.
So I'm going to really quickly read through some of these songs, just again, because this is my first experience with any of this music.
Also, in the context,
yeah,
there are quite a few lyrics that Sondheim has decided he's embarrassed of.
Okay.
So I think he doesn't, or he didn't look at it as like something to be super proud of. And there is quite a lot of things that he didn't want. Like, I Feel Pretty. Yeah. He was like, this person wouldn't sing this.
I was literally going to bring that up.
He was like, she wouldn't sing this. So what I like what Spielberg did with the song is that they put it in gimbals and it became a parody of it.
Yes.
It became I'm dressing up, I'm doing a thing, which gives it a lot more levity because also the rumble happens right before intermission.
Okay.
They die, intermission.
And then they come back and sing
I Feel Pretty.
Okay.
So usually musicals enter with something fun and a little lighthearted, and or like, you know, the second act brings you into something either continually happening or some, you know, like, oh, this is happening elsewhere, or meanwhile,
Yeah,
you know,
yes,
like,
yes.
so it makes narrative sense for me in my brain that this would be happening during the Rumble. And I think it gives it a little more dramatic irony to be like, this is like her last moment of happiness.
Yes, yes.
This is her having fun. This is almost her American dream, where she's being silly about the fact that she's in this store that, you know, all these white people that have money can just
$17 silk scarf.
The $17 silk scarf.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Okay, so I'll get there in a second, because that was one of my bigger problems, but let's go through some of these songs. So each of the gangs have a song in the beginning as we get introduced. La Burunqueña and the Jet song. Something's Coming, Maria, Tonight, America, G Officer Krupke, One Hand, One Heart, Cool, I Feel Pretty, Somewhere. But I think looking at all of these songs, most of them, maybe most is dramatic, I'm reading through them again, I find a lot of the songs to be unnecessary. And I know that's sort of like a thing with musicals where it's like, okay, well, no song in a musical is unnecessary because they're designed to tell you something about these characters, either moving the story along or specifically keeping the character in one place. For example, like I Feel Pretty, which is exactly how I felt about it, where we're in the middle of this conflict, of this deep conflict between these two people that Maria is aware of. It's not like she's ignoring it or, you know, that anything happened that would put her in a state of bliss other than just being happy with Tony. And so for her to have this like really long song where we don't learn anything about her and we don't learn anything about her plan to get out with Tony or how excited she, you know, like what's next for her, just about like this idea of being this dreamy lady with this pretty dress with the love of her life. I think exceptions to that are, I mean, America is probably the best song in this whole thing. And I say that because if you had to encapsulate the entire show in one song, I think it would be America. Despite it not having
at least
anything
the conflict of the show.
Exactly. Where it's like, despite not having any issue or any regard to the gangs in that song, it represents the main
or even
conflict.
the love story.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really just talking about the race relations.
It's talking about the race relations, which
or
is
like
what
the really
is,
internal struggle of Puerto Ricans in the mainland.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I suppose it doesn't really put the white people's perspective, like the Jets' perspective, in that. But it's sort of what causes the conflict to begin with, is the fact that these people are coming into America in order to seek opportunity, but are in a position where they're even conflicted by it. I have the lyrics pulled up. Hang on.
Yeah, I think America is an excellent song.
Yeah, you know, I think I don't know the specific rules of musical writing. I know there's supposed to be an I want song, an I feel song, right, to kind of learn about your characters as you're moving through the show. And we get one for Tony. Do we get one for Maria? Do we get I Feel Pretty? I guess that's why I feel so disconnected from her, is that there's nothing to her except she's in love.
Yeah.
But in America, I love the lyrics of just like the back and forth of Anita having a cautious optimism about being in America and having all these opportunities, and then Bernardo coming in with the but after every line. And I like that they stage it in an interesting way as they're running through the streets, visually representing these problems that they're talking about as well. 12 in a room in America, lots of new housing with more space, lots of doors slamming in our face. I'll get a terrace apartment. Well, you better get rid of your accent, you know, kind of like the back and forth. So I definitely think that was the most successful out of the songs. But in terms of just like a fun song that I really enjoyed for no reason, I really like the G Officer Krupke song.
I love that song.
I don't really think I learned
that
anything.
That is so funny because I was like, she's gonna fucking hate this song because it's the most musical theater song.
It is,
in
but
it.
But I think it had like a tongue-in-cheek thing to it where it felt really theatrical without. Here's the thing. what I didn't like was the way the movie began, right? Where it, like, you have this beautiful shot. I think you have, like, power lines. You open on power lines in the sky, and then the camera cranes down, and then immediately you've got 3 dudes snapping, you know? And then they're starting their choreography, and then they're spreading out, and they're, like, kind of casing the joint, like they're doing this weird thing. And I was like, oh, man, this isn't hiding the fact that it's a musical at all. It's going outward musical, 100% saturation. And I think G Officer Krupke had a little bit of like a wink and a nod to it, where they were sort of like, take me away, man, kind of thing, that I thought was funny. Like it had a humor to it, where it was in on the joke instead of me being like, this is insane. Like I can't believe that people take this seriously.
I love Officer Krupke, and I think like when I was listening to that thing, they were talking about the placement of it in the show after the Rumble and how it doesn't like fit. And I think they came to a consensus that the comedic levity it brings is actually helpful.
Yeah,
because
it doesn't feel stupid. Like I don't necessarily think it's out of place.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I also have another anecdote, but they were gonna. So Sondheim wrote, "G Officer Krupke, fuck you."
Oh, and they couldn't say fuck, huh?
No, they could. So this is another thing of like the turning point for musical theater is that there's no musical theater show that said fuck or any expletive really before it. But there was the season before on Broadway, the first expletive said on Broadway was in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, which is an amazing show, but not a musical.
Okay.
So Sondheim was like, we're going to be the cat on the hot tin roof of the musical theater, right? We're going to do this. But then they played it for some of their, I think, investors, some old lady, right? Like playing it for some old lady. And she went white and like everyone was like, okay, if you want to sell these records like everywhere, if you want to sell records everywhere, you got to change that.
That is so funny.
Change that. And so then he
was
like,
like, screw you?
It's Krupp you. They use his name.
Okay.
And the reason they did that is because Sondheim was like, well, what am I going to put there? What am I going to put there? And Bernstein, the guy that wrote the song, the music, he came in and he did Krupp you, which is so clever to use his name as like a, verb.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just love that. I think that's such a fun little anecdote about their
Man, what a
their
time.
process, yeah.
Yeah, and wasn't it also like, wasn't West Side Story sort of like the first of many things? Like, couldn't they not even do an interracial kiss?
Yeah, so in the Hays Code, I'm not like super well versed on it, but I do know that like they could portray interracial relationships, but they had to be same race actors.
Okay.
So there's a lot of
there's a lot of brown face in the movie, right?
Oh, there's a ton of brown face in the movie, but I don't think that's why. I think they wanted Natalie Wood in the movie.
Okay.
But there's a lot of other movies. There's a lot of like Eastern Asian. Like I believe the first interracial couple was an Asian woman and a white man in film.
Okay.
Like American.
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
I would have to double check on all that. But yeah, so that's also a proponent of it was the code.
Okay.
Some code bullshit.
Yeah, cold bullshit. What were we talking about? Why did we bring that up? Oh, because I liked Officer Krupke. Yeah, no, I thought that was a great song. I guess now that I'm speaking through it, maybe 3 stars is a little high for the way that I feel about the music. From a show perspective, I think a lot of the songs are sort of there to be there, in my opinion. Even the song Maria is kind of nails on a chalkboard, in my opinion. Although I like the kind of almost bird's call quality of it, where he's in the streets looking for her, and it's like an echo, where he's saying Maria, and it's echoing down the street, and he's almost following his own bird call to see it. I enjoy that, but
well, I feel like things like that are what are really portraying Ansel Elgort's like investment into this music.
Sure.
Like it's sort of into this like that's really portraying to me that he likes her, right? I just felt I don't feel any chemistry between them, but I do feel like he's trying, you know? And it's it's not fault of either of them, but I think like I didn't feel magic when they were together.
I agree.
They didn't portray that. And I feel like Song Tonight is so beautiful, and I do like it, and that's probably the best moment between them. I wish that I liked the cloister scene more because I love that scene. I wish that I cared more. That's why I put it at a 4, and like they're acting at a 3. But like, it really just didn't sell it to me emotionally, and I don't know if that would have been different if I saw it like on the big screen versus the streaming screen that I saw.
Right.
I can't really tell, but but if I was in the theater, is that enough to portray love to me? Is it going to be enough if I'm sitting there watching them? I think everyone really sounded great, and I like the fact that they sing the national anthem of Puerto Rico as the first song in the movie. They don't.
Oh, is that what that
normally do
is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or their rendition of, they start singing it at the cops. I love that.
Oh, I didn't even put that together.
Yeah, and that's new, and I like that a lot.
Cool. Yeah. Any I know I mentioned earlier that I wasn't sure about Ansel Elgort's singing chops. Anybody, in your opinion, that wasn't carrying their weight, or do you think that everybody was really strong?
There's not anyone I could think of that I thought didn't sound good.
Yeah.
I thought, there wasn't a moment where I was like that.
You're like,
oh, no.
Yeah, I guess I felt that in Cool, but that actually is just the way the song is, and I guess it was just,
I didn't notice it being
I was like,
egregious
he's really
or like
flat, but yeah, no.
wrong. It felt it's like the jazzy way that it's supposed to be. So,
oh my God, can we talk about dance now?
Yeah,
Can we talk about choreo?
Yeah, what'd you put?
I put a 5.
I put a 5.
Yeah, it is.
All right.
Yay.
It is so good.
Man, it is
killer.
good. It is good.
So here, can I preface something real quick?
Yeah.
So the way that I think about choreo, especially as a musical theater person, is this choreo telling a story? Is it storytelling?
Yes.
Because, and I think in West Side Story especially, not in every show, in West Side Story especially, the choreo is its own way of storytelling, its own way of perceiving emotion, action, like the way that they're holding themselves, the snapping, it immediately translates their unit. Immediately translates who the leader is.
Yep.
Immediately translates they're on a mission, or like they're always on call. They're, and I do love that scene where they deface the flag. I think that's really powerful. And I do think the opening is a little long because they wanted to show New York and like the Lincoln Center. They wanted to give you that context.
Yep.
And it does take a little while to get to where it gets to, but I do love that scene, and I love the dance fighting is strong.
Yeah. I mean,
and they are so good at dance.
They're really good.
They got some dancers.
There was a lot of moments in this where I was like, "Oh my God, could this get more?"
I think
musical.
Was Bernardo Billy Elliot? He won a Tony for that as a kid. I'm almost 100% sure. Could you look that up? My thing died. The guy that played Bernardo actually was taken out of acting retirement because he played one of the Billy Elliots on Broadway and won a Tony as like a juvenile Tony for all 3 of them, and ended up getting called by the producers or whoever casting looking for him, and he like hadn't been acting for a while.
Wow. Yeah,
and they were
that
like,
is true.
"We're looking for someone. We know, would you be interested?" And he was so good. Yeah, I'm so glad they pulled him out of obscurity. Like
David Alvarez,
man.
Yeah, that is true.
But yeah, anybody that could play Billy Elliot, shit, clearly a strong dancer.
Yeah, there were a lot of moments, like, obviously, when you first start, it's just, like, immediately into snapping. And then they do this really choreographed motion of defacing the flag, where they're, punching their hands into the paint to splatter their hands on it, when it would be much more efficient to use a roller or to just chuck it.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously it's
it's
being
also part of,
visually
I think, like the percussion of the movement is part of it too.
The sound of picking up the can and hitting it against the floor is aiding in the music. I expected it to be an eye roll where I was going to be like, oh my God, this is going to be insane. But it was so visually interesting and everybody was so strong, was just on it. Even in the not so dancey choreography where they're just staged in a certain way and they're all kind of like like if they're staggered as the gang and they're all kind of like talking to each other in the back and acting even when the camera's not on them type of thing, like all of that kind of choreography of getting in each other's faces after the cops come in the very beginning. The choreo in that G Officer Krupke dance little thing was really fun. A lot of really good moments. But, I mean, obviously the best moment was the dance at the school. It sings. I mean, it is just
It is incredible.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
It, like, honestly makes the whole thing worth it for me because that whole
I would
scene,
just watch that scene. Like, I'll just play it on YouTube randomly.
And is it true that, like, that dance didn't exist in the previous movie? Or it, like, just had a different context? I'm not recalling.
I'm not exactly sure. I do know that it's not like an active fight scene between them, like where it's like clearly they're dancing to show dominance, right?
Yes,
like
they're egging each other on.
But what happens in the dance scene is that it really just goes to Maria and Tony. Everyone leaves. So you know that moment where they're behind the bleachers and like it looks really clean, and then when they get shot back to reality, they're just in normal bleachers.
Yeah.
So that scene is represented in the other movie, and I think also in the stage play by everyone leaving. Like they're in the gym, everyone leaves, or like everyone's there, and then it's all like blurred out in the movie. But then like everyone leaves in the stage show, and then they dance together, and then they do their thing. So like they're the only people in the world. They're like that, the Pride and Prejudice moment.
Totally.
And
which is, I mean, even just hearing that just sounds way less effective because, like, why would they be? Isn't the whole point of the conflict that there is this surrounding, their gangs, their families?
Well, I think the idea is that even with everything going on, even with all the dancing and the swishing skirts and the music and
it's
being
only
across
them.
The room, they catch each other's eye, insta love.
Okay,
right? That's what they're telling us is that they are so transfixed on each other that it's giving us the subtext or the shorthand of they've fallen in love with each other, or like they are so drawn to each other, it's kismet or whatever.
Yeah,
and which I guess maybe not as effective in this film, but I did like the scene behind the bleacher. I thought that they did that a really good job. I think he's weirdly tall against her, and that felt a little predatory and weird. But whatever. The dance, I don't remember the dance from the beginning one, so it might not have happened. Like they're there.
Yeah,
but like
I don't remember what I read that someone was saying that it just changes the context, and there's an element of the dance that is pushing forward the conflict and the fact that they're egging each other on.
Well, I know that they were like, oh, this is supposed to bridge the gap. We're throwing this party. The school's throwing a party so that everyone
we can come together
and not be jerks to each other or whatever. But I think also I want to talk about the skirts.
Yes, please.
So Paul Treswell is the costume designer for this Spielberg's West Side Story, and I watched a little video of him talking about his process, and he was really doing a lot of research about 1950s to make it feel 1950s, make it feel very real New York 1950s, and I think he did a really good job. It definitely feels like that, and I love the color schemes he was using, and I do love that they used Maria's white dress. That's classic.
Yep.
Maria's white dress. I love that Anita gives her the red belt so that it looks like the original movie.
Yeah.
I think that her giving that is very cute way to tie them together as, almost sisterly bond. And
absolutely.
She's becoming a woman because she gets to go to a dance with a boy or whatever, right? Like, I just love that moment. I do really like that.
Yes.
But he said that Spielberg gave him like 2 notes, and it was that he wants her in the white dress, not only because of the picture, like, being classic, but also because it has a virginal quality to it. It has that fresh-faced ingenue. It's so much part of her story. but also that he wanted the skirts to swish. And boy, did they. They
swished.
absolutely did.
Oh my God. They were,
Incredible.
They were their own actors.
Yes.
Like,
I know.
So
I'm
much fun to watch.
I'm gonna add another number to my acting because the skirt acting was hella good in this film.
Yes. So much fun.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
I think it was also, I think Guillermo del Toro went on Twitter to talk about that scene specifically, and he was talking about how challenging it is to block something like that, like just sort of logistically.
Yeah.
But just talking about how fun it is to watch because the camera is dancing with the others, and how it's like almost as if the camera is right in the middle of it, where it's getting bumped by people and kind of like flipping around and following the swirling chaos of it, where they refuse to dance with one another. They're only staying with their partners and only staying with their gangs. So the camera is like playing a really big part, which makes it so visually striking. And then the colors and the costumes and everybody looked so pretty. And
yeah, no, the visual, it's very visually striking.
And it's a great scene. Like, it's just a great scene of not having to say a word, but making the conflict really understandable and clear, where it's just like, obviously we already know that from the very beginning with the flag and with the police and everything. But yeah, it's just it's so perfectly musical theater in a way that I didn't think I would like, but I really did like. It was so perfectly done that there's just nothing, there isn't a way to say anything bad about it.
Yeah.
I wish everything had something like that.
Yeah, right.
It was so good.
No, I agree. I think that's probably the strongest part.
I think so too. Yeah, I think it's that, and then the choreographed violence in the Salts warehouse. Like, I guess that's their rumble, right?
Yes.
That was really interesting because there were a lot of shots from the ceiling that were kind of looking down, and there was a lot of shadow play, which made it look really cool. But I have like a gripe with choreographed fight scenes a lot of the time because it's really easy to make it look stupid. A lot of the time in action movies, you got your big brawly guy who's beating people up, and then there are 8 people waiting in line to get beat up, and that wouldn't be happening. And I think there were enough people on either side of the gangs that were
engaged.
Yeah, they were engaged with one another. They weren't kind of like watching someone else get beat up and then waiting in line to also get beat up by the winner of that brawl. And that makes it more realistic and more visually effective. And it's just something I pay attention to when I don't like it. So I enjoyed the way that was blocked as well.
I'm going to mention the end, because this isn't technically dance, but it was part of the movement.
Totally.
And
you're talking about the lift at the end?
lift, yeah. So at the end, they decide to take Tony away. Mm-hmm. And normally, they don't. Maria throws herself on him in front of the cops. Oh. So they take Tony away from that moment. I like that a lot. Because they're doing it together, because they're all shamed by this little girl holding a gun at them. And I just really liked how Maria got to walk out of the scene instead of throwing herself on the pile of grief that she was feeling.
Yeah.
I do like that the cops turn the corner and Rita Moreno's holding a gun.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Sort of gives you a weird cliffhanger moment where you're thinking, oh, fuck, what's going to happen?
Uh-oh. Rita,
what are they going to do with Rita Moreno?
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So I did like the staging of that a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I definitely think the choreography was the best part of this in total. And also just, the cinematography and how the choreography of the camera is also playing a role. Oh, yeah.
So if you wanted to mention, just because we're not always going to be able to talk about the musical as a filmed medium and not, et cetera, back, vice versa.
Yeah.
But I think that as far as filming a musical, this felt very organic.
Steven Spielberg has had an incredibly long career, and this is
he's
his
never
first
done a musical. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like a first musical. It is so elegantly crafted in a lot of ways. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I was telling Sean, like, this is such a bad musical to start with for this podcast, because the whole idea is that Sean loves musicals and I don't. And this really impressed me and I really liked it. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to handle the camp of a musical, like how silly it can be, how over the top it can be in a film, because I feel like the film structure has like more seriousness to it, right? Where it's, if you're going to take something as bright and fun and youthful and energetic as like this dancey, singy musical number, to put it in a film framing device kind of immediately makes it more serious. Like you need to like, enjoy this in a different way than you would as if it was on stage. And this still had like levity where it needed to be and seriousness where it needed to be. And they both were so effective. And it didn't feel like it was two different movies that got glued together. Like it worked so well. And I think that takes a really special type of person, because it can feel really whiplashy, like going from we're going to a rumble, like we're going down.
Confront him.
Right in his handsome face. and then to like Maria crying about her brother. And, like it can get crazy to be like, what?
Yeah, right.
And it didn't. It was so effective. So kudos to Spielberg for, his first musical, and hopefully not his last. I would love to see another musical from him.
And I do think that
good.
this very much is a labor of love. He said that he was listening to it when he was a child in his home. So this is like,
there you go,
something that is very personal to him as well, which I love. I love that he's able to work on passion project type things, and because clearly it's coming through. What did you give it overall?
Oh my God, are we at overall already?
Yeah, we're at overall.
Oh my God. Well, I gave it 3.5. And now that I'm talking about it, I don't necessarily think that's fair. It's probably a 4, I think, for me.
I gave it a 4.
Yeah. When I initially saw the movie, I have a Letterboxd, and I put the star rating immediately following the movie, just a gut reaction. And I think I was generally, as I was sitting in my couch watching it, I was like sort of like slightly positively affected by it, right? Where I was impressed. I thought I wouldn't like it, and I liked it. So I was like, okay, well, it's above average, which is 3, right? But, it's these songs went on a little too long. I thought I didn't really like the songs very much. I thought Ansel Elgort was weird at points. I didn't love Maria and Tony's relationship because I didn't believe their chemistry. So it was sort of like my mind immediately went to the negatives. But now that I'm talking about like the way that this was staged and how it really does feel like a love letter, and this great representation of what makes musicals exciting and interesting and different than regular films.
And why this musical? This musical is because I think with the story that is still very prevalent, like it's still,
of course,
it still attaches itself, it still connects, and to even place it at the same time, I really liked that they didn't update the music in the sense of like they didn't modernize the music from its original feeling, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't have like, it's not more upbeat. There's not like,
right. They didn't add a drum set.
They didn't add a drum set. Yeah. So it's still very classic.
Yes.
West Side Story, but it does feel modern in its presentation, and it does connect with modern audiences. And I think that it's very clear. I mean, it was up for Best Picture. People are still talking about it. People still love it, and I think that's hard to do. Something that is so beloved to remake, like that's such a hard. You're already gonna get people to be like, "Well, why are you touching this?" It's like if somebody tried to redo The Princess Bride, I would just say, "No, you don't," because why would you touch this?
Yeah,
But I can really appreciate what Spielberg did and what the whole as the sum of its parts is good. I also gave it a 4. But I think just because of I think as a whole, West Side Story is a 5 for me. West Side Story is a 5 for me. It is musical theater. It is American musical theater. It's an example of some of the best musical theater work that's ever come out of the last century. But this movie, I just wish I fell in love with them more. I wish I felt that love, that magic that can happen from musicals, can feel like you're a part of their love story. And I just wish I had a little bit more of that. And that's why it's settling at a 4 for me.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, a weird way to start because I feel like this isn't a good representation of how I normally feel about musical theater, but perhaps like perhaps an okay way to start, just because there are things about musicals that I do enjoy, or I can overlook, perhaps would be a better way to say it. But do you know what we're doing next time?
Oh, I have an idea.
Yeah. I think the plan is for next episode to talk about Rent, which I can't stand.
I famously hate Rent. So this might be another instance where we agree on a lot of things.
Sure.
But there's going to be plenty to talk about. So
absolutely.
Next time we'll talk about Rent. I think overall we can say this is a cheer.
Absolutely a cheer. I was totally impressed by it.
I'm so glad you liked it because this is a classic. And I thought starting on this would be good. Because it's not only topical because of the Academy Awards and like it just came out basically and people are still talking about it. There's a new version and also our old high school is doing it. So I'm going to go see it in a couple weeks at our old high school, my alma mater. And so I wanted to start with that, but I also feel like it's an example of an excellent American musical.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a cool way to start because it's something you've never seen before and that had very little context for, and so that we can have a truly reactionary conversation about it because you don't have any of these other influences on it. Where it's when we talk about Oklahoma, you already have an opinion about Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's
I forgot about Oklahoma.
I just felt like this is a really good place to start, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you guys. Whoever's
so
listening here, I appreciate it. Feel free to come back next time. We're planning on doing bi-monthly episodes every other week, talking about the best, worst, and weirdest in musical theater. So
yeah,
we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.